Welcome back to Lost LT's Razor. My guest for episode 9 is Joaquin Camarena, otherwise known as Sino Talk. He's a Marine veteran, intelligence analyst, and the mastermind behind Sino Talk, which, in my opinion, is one of the most serious OSINT pages that's been tracking China's military buildup and rise recently.
I'm the old man.
And I'm Lost LT 1775, an infantry officer and captain in the Marine Corps. Welcome to Lost LT's Razor, where the fight, the leader, and the lessons learned all matter. Joaquin, thank you for joining us, brother.
You're welcome, my man. It's great to be here to finally talk about a subject I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, totally. Would you just kind of start it off with really just giving us a recap of the experience that you had both in and out of the Marine Corps and kind of how it led you to being so passionate about everything that you put online?
Yeah, so I think it all draws back to my time in the Marine Corps as an intel analyst. So during that time, I was actually focused on the Indo-Pacific, but more specific, and specifically China and the PLA. So that would kind of led me to continuing my studies into, not only the PLA, but also Chinese domestic politics, so the CCP and how they operate within their domestic political apparatus, and during my studies at my university, I actually got to go to China on 3 separate times to actually study different aspects of China, ranging from the Chinese culture and language all the way up to the Chinese economy and the foreign affairs aspect, how they actually conduct the diplomacy. And so that's what led me to, also undertaking my graduate degree as well, and be able to formally conduct research into the PLA and specifically the PLA modernization, with an emphasis on their expeditionary capabilities, so amphibious, naval, and airborne.
So it seems like a lot of the kind of like your initial excitement started while you were in the Marine Corps, but you have not stopped at all since you got out. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
How long ago did you get out also? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, I got out like around 10 years ago.
Okay, sweet. Awesome.
Yeah, so it's been it was a different time whenever I was in the Marines than it is now.
Yeah.
I will say that they've now take the threat of China seriously. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into it. One of the things that me and you had talked about a good amount before, I think, to kind of start the conversation off, really, how would you summarize it up? How does political command and control from the CCP actually show up inside PLA units? Because I think that's one of the at least a misconception, something that I honestly wasn't super aware of, and I'm sure that the case goes for a lot of people too. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so how political command and control, or C2, actually shows up within PLA units, you have 2 entities. So party committees would operate from the company all the way up to the group army level, and they will go by like different names. So political committees will be found in the regiments and brigades and higher echelons. Grassroots party committees are found at the battalion level and headquarters. And then party branches are what they are called at the company level. And then going down to the platoon level, you have what are called party small groups. So essentially, those would be just 3-man groups. So you're looking at the platoon commander, the platoon XO, and maybe a senior NCO. that would make up that group. Um, but what's really interesting is that within the political uh, committees, they actually have a standing committee that is responsible for approving the major operational decisions along with the unit commanders. So you're looking at a dual command, a dual decision command, dual command decision network, and that exists all the way from to platoon level, all the way up to the CMC, the Central Military Commission.
So essentially, just so that I can understand this, you're saying like a literal political individual from the CCP that's just embedded with PLA that essentially serves as some kind of overwatch to all the decisions that's being made. Is that correct?
Yes. So how it would actually work? I mean, so the committees are the ones that would make the decisions. So think of it as officers or higher uh, or the head shed of battalions, companies, and platoons. And then the commissars would be the ones that would oversee that the decisions are made or decisions are carried out along with the commander. So they would be both responsible for, not only making sure the commands are being conducted, but they are being conducted in a way that further serves the CCP's interest. So that's really is different what we would consider command and control, especially in the Marine Corps, because
100%.
yeah, because like you should be able to give me an order as an officer to an NCO. I look at it like okay, so this is the commander's intent. Cool, got it. And then I give it to um, my squad and my fire team leaders. Like this is what it is. Go off and disseminate the order. And let your fire teams know. That's in a way that wouldn't really happen in the PLA. Whereas in the PLA, it would be more, okay, I want to do this as a commander. The standing committees and the commissars would decide to say, this doesn't really make sense to the party's directive. It seems as if you're taking too much initiative. So this is not going to work.
Just like an unheard of concept to my ears, or the Marine Corps in general. I feel like for years at this point, I've heard people constantly refer to the fact that what sets the Marine Corps apart is how we operate based off of initiative and kind of decentralized decision making from commander's intent, whereas what we see with the PLA is just quite literally the opposite. And it's just hard to imagine, like, do you think mission command can actually exist for them under the oversight that they're getting from the CCP?
I think it could have existed at one point. In fact, they were actually heading towards that at one point before Xi Jinping came to power in 2012. But after he came into power and he essentially reformed the PLA to be more centralized, to be more under the command of the party, you kind of see them trying to make a bastardized version of mission control to where, like, hey, you can have some ability to operate within left and right lateral limits, but you need to make sure it's within the party's guidelines or within the party's, or it will achieve what the party wants.
Yeah, I mean,
And I don't.
I just find it interesting. Well, I mean, it just begs the question of, like, with centralized control and the lack of encouraging initiative, like how does their maybe I call it fear at the smaller level, fear of mistakes, fear of being wrong, or fear of making a decision that's outside of what those left and right limits are. Like, how does that affect their ability to even be adaptable on a battlefield in a fight? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So for that one, it's going to be very hard, especially now, because if they were to say give a COA or a course of action that would make sense from an operational or even or from a tactical and operational perspective, but it doesn't really align with what the CCP wants or feels as if or perceives that they would achieve their objectives, they wouldn't want to do that. And then not only that, but that would cause the commanders to become suspect in the eyes of, the commissars and the committees, and they would actually think of, can we trust this person? This person is going against what the party wants. Can we try? Can we? Is he the best person to be in charge, or should we put in the commissars to take, or should we let the commissars take command of that specific unit? Because the commissars can take command if needed, and so in the case of if they get injured, if the actual commander gets injured, gets incapacitated in some way, or contact is lost, then the commissar can actually step up and say, "I'm in charge now," and even that leads to a lot of issues.
I mean, just being a commander at any level has got to be terrifying, right? Because for them, if they make a decision in the wrong light, they're just going to be replaced at a bare minimum. I mean, it's just so counterintuitive to what we think. But why is understanding that command relationship important for us in the Marine Corps, or just in the military in general, to understand?
I think it's important to understand because from the Marines' perspective, it would be something totally, well, from a U.S. military perspective, is that this is a totally alien concept that you will be interacting with during potential conflicts. And so it's best to understand how they actually do their command and control, the PLA do their command and control, because, hey, you're going to be going up against it one day, possibly.
Yeah.
Another reason is that, if you know how they conduct their command and control, if you know that they're going to have a lot of issues within their in conducting operations, you know that they're going to have like a fear, if the commanders have a fear of advocating for courses of action that would cause them to be in a bad light in the CCP's eyes, then that gives you tremendous leeway in actually constructing your courses of action or your concept of operations to make sure to disrupt their decision-making process.
Yeah.
Because they can say, hey, we wanted to, you could do, X, Y, Z, and if X doesn't totally fulfill what the CCP's objectives are, they won't do it.
Yeah.
They will be very hesitant to even advocate for a course of action to prevent you from achieving X's objectives.
Yeah, I would just sum it up. To me, it sounds like everything you just said just kind of sounds like, the Marine Corps exploits and kind of lives off of friction and initiative, whereas what it seems like is maybe the PLA might kind of collapse under some of that because they're so caged in their decision-making, or maybe lack thereof, from oversight from higher.
Exactly. It's one of those things where they would inevitably come up with issues in trying to decide a course of action whenever they meet that fiction, because they never had the opportunity to do that outside of maybe missions other than war or peacekeeping missions.
Yeah.
And disaster response within their own country. But even then, those lessons learned, quote unquote, are very limited in application to actual conflicts.
Well, and I mean, just to echo that point, this kind of goes on to one of the other things we were talking about before recording today, but every time I open social media, I see more showcasing PLA training and really them using unmanned systems in general. And I think that's That's one of the things that I would like to think that we are focusing on more and more heavily now. And I think me and you kind of alluded to that a few minutes ago, but how do you see, what have you seen the PLA actually physically start to incorporate unmanned systems down at the tactical, whether squad, platoon, kind of company level units?
Oh wow, this is actually touching upon something I'm actively researching into.
Sweet.
Um, yeah, so you see them incorporating, the world famous RoboWolf. Um, I don't even know if you can call it a UAV or drone, I guess.
Mm.
They're incorporating that into their tactical formations. In fact, like the recent video that was unveiled showing the 124th amphibious amphibious combined arms brigade conducting that little propaganda drill. You've seen it front and center,
Mm-hmm.
carrying supplies, carrying and essentially taking point on patrols or during the lead up to making contact. That is something that they actually have achieved, bringing that RoboWolf to the platoon, if not to the squad level.
Hmm.
So now, you know, you're facing you may be facing a PLA platoon equipped with uh, that has RoboWolves that actually has either a QBZ 191
Mm-hmm.
assault rifle or even a light machine gun on the back of it to be able to shoot rounds off or to be able to or to mark targets if it has like a grenade launcher on the back, all the way up to you employing them in engineering during combat engineering
Hmm.
scenarios. We actually have seen that recently. I would say within the last 2 or 3 days, there was a video that was released showing a heavy combined arm brigade employing those dogs as combat engineers. They're strapping. I forgot the modern name for them, but Bangalore torpedoes
Hmm.
that you've seen on Saving Private Ryan,
Yeah,
the D-Day
right.
scene where they blow up. Yeah, so you've seen them strapping them to that. You see them like strapping them onto the dogs and having them like go up and discharge them um,
Now,
to mine.
interrupt you here. Are those dogs are they fully autonomous, or is someone controlling it, or is it both?
No, it's not fully autonomous, unfortunately. They have been trying to make some efforts to make them fully autonomous, but they
Hmm.
haven't got to that point yet. But there is someone controlling them, and
Okay.
that's actually was one of the points I was going to get to. Um, Whenever you see these dogs or UAGs, unmanned ground vehicles, being
Hmm.
employed by like the squads or like um, other PLA units, they're being operated by by an operator within an armored vehicle. In that footage, you actually see. That's why you see the ZBD 04As
Hmm.
providing fire, is because providing fire so close to where the dog is employed, because one of those is actually controlling the dog,
Hmm.
employing it to actually uh, lay down the Bangalore torpedo.
It's interesting. I keep coming back to, just because we were just talking about the C2 relationship a little bit. I Do you think that the PLA and kind of their use of drones, does that cover for the fact that they have weak junior, like lack of NCO leadership and initiative? You know what I mean? Like it seems like they're prioritizing unmanned or autonomous eventually systems over traditional forms of reconnaissance and kind of fire support, and just using NCOs to go forth and execute a problem. Do you think that they're using drones, and like, does that cover for the lack of initiative from NCOs?
I don't think so. If anything, they're still trying to develop NCOs that are similar to what what Western forces like the United States and European militaries are trying to or have, I should say.
Hmm.
But the reason why they put so much emphasis on drones, whether it be like little nano drones that they have, or like to the big drones that can, monitor the airfield or monitor the battle space,
Hmm.
is because they know that intelligence is a heavy intelligence and ISR are going to be critical components to any potential conflict that they may be in.
Yeah.
And also plays a critical aspect to, the systems warfare doctrine that they employ. For that, that's the reason why they have a heavy emphasis on ISR on those drones, so that they can actually, employ them to gather the intelligence as quickly as possible and relay it to various other units on the battlefield through various nodes, whether it be, the Z20T or the Type 100 tank or the Type 100 infantry support vehicle or any other unit or any other system that they employ to disseminate that information to the units for, battlefield awareness or targeting.
What do you think, if you could name like one or two priorities, really? How do you see the Marine Corps needing to evolve tactically to handle PLA unmanned capabilities?
I say for that one, it would be developing a better emphasis on camouflaging and concealment, and as well as some electronic warfare as well. Because because these drones, people like to say that these are, ground changing things, but in reality, they're not.
Mm-hmm.
If they were, we would have seen the Ukraine conflict end. But it's been ongoing since 2022, and it's more likely going to continue for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
I would say, and so yeah, so I mean, I would say I would say the Marine Corps needs to get really good at utilizing and employing even the basics of camouflage and concealment, regardless of its physical, electronic, IR, as well as employing effective electronic warfare. Because you can put all your chips in on EW, but that's only half the battle.
Yeah.
And G.I. Joe is knowing is half the battle.
Yeah.
But when you employ tactics like camouflage and concealment or SOA, that's where you're going to win. That's going to be where you're able to get the most bang for your buck.
And also something that like every rifle squad or whatever small tactical unit can control that right now, right? I think that's often I hear Marines kind of complaining about, we're waiting on hire to give us the tools to like we don't brief EW in our plan because not every squad has it, or we don't brief a kinetic effect because we don't have reliable kinetic effects. But what you do have the ability to do is go in the backyard right now and practice camouflage and concealment and build things that like increase your survivability on the battlefield by knowing your detection. So I think I would 100% agree with you. I think that that's something that we can control and that everyone should be doing if they're not already.
Exactly, because you can get the most fancy Android developed system out there, EW system out there. I'm only picking on Android because they're in the news right now.
Yeah, well, and hopefully they do, but in the meantime, you got to close the gap and you got to make sure you control what you can control.
Exactly.
Switching gears a little bit to logistics and kind of some of the sustainment stuff. What have you seen? I mean, because they have these unmanned systems, they've got a lot of technology and new weapon systems that I've been seeing unveiled as well. But when we start talking logistics, how do you see, like, what efforts have they made to modernize that front?
Oh, was actually a great segue from the unmanned systems question. They've been trying to modernize because they understand logistics is key to modern wars. They understand this from even from like Desert Storm. They saw how logistics is a critical component to the various operations that were conducted um, by the coalition forces. And so for the PLA, they see drones as being able to close that gap, close the gaps that they have, whether it be providing airlift to get wounded personnel out of the aid stations to maybe to hospital ships or to battalion aid stations or even to actual hospitals for follow-on treatment, all the way down to providing providing resupply to those units that would otherwise be left unsupplied. And those range from, we talked about the robo dog. That's one key aspect of it. Another one is the various drones that they are developing at a quick pace, all the way from small, medium-sized vertical lift drones. I think you can call them helicopter drones as well. That'll provide maybe like a day or week supply at most, all the way up to massive C-130 type or C-130 sized UAVs capable of conducting airdrops as well as landing and evacuating casualties. So they understand that drones would be a very necessary part, and now they're trying to develop those systems and integrate them to fulfill or to fill those gaps and to be able to provide a logistical sustainment to those forces during combat ops.
Seems like they've got some. I mean, just by hearing what you're saying, like their logistics and resupply seems pretty robust, I would say. But
it's getting there.
Yeah. Well, I guess in the meantime, while it's still getting there and it's not already done and perfect per se, what do you see as maybe a critical weakness? I'm hesitant to use like center of gravity, critical vulnerability exploitation plan, but essentially that, like, what do you think is the gap in that process or that sustainment cycle that could be legitimately focused on and targeted in a potential fight?
I would say their ability to overemphasis on drones, because you're seeing them develop more drones and don't really other options is like sending in helicopter like Z-20s or Z-8s or other manned aircraft. You kind of see that as going off to the wayside. So it seems as if they're trying to put their bucks or trying to put all their chips into the unmanned aspect. Now, what that means for Marines, for Marine units, or even other military units, is to, if you can shut down most, if not all, of their resupply capability, whether it be through EW or kinetic means, then they're going to be harder to resupply. Mm-hmm. Those units will be hard pressed to receive supplies. But then not only that, the PLA will be forced to utilize man assets, and that will just increase the risk posed to those units and to those assets.
Yeah, I mean that's best case scenario. Sounds like, survive an initial strike or an initial round, and then thrive when it comes to duration. Ideally, maybe in a perfect world if everything else goes right, but
yeah, I mean it's one of those things where the PLA is a very risk averse. Currently, is a very risk averse organization. If you put them in a scenario where, okay, we're risking all these drones for little effort or little gain, and we don't want to risk our pilots because it takes a long time to retrain them, and also we're going to lose birds. So if you put them in that decision matrix or that risk matrix, you're going to force them to either push that unit back or stall whatever operation or prevent whatever operation they're planning from being conducted.
What would you say is potentially like one of the bigger misconceptions that we have about the PLA? Because when I think back to probably a similar conversation I might have had with just some friends on a random weekend about Russia right before the invasion to Ukraine, like I looked at them as being 10 feet tall, kind of, I mean, that's just kind of like the way that we grew up in the Marine Corps, at least, was like this huge foe. And I think we have the same perception about the PLA. Are there any major misconceptions you think that we have with respect to the PLA?
I think it would be that the PLA are just untrained, that they're not really able to uh, conduct operations or combat operations. While, they came a long way from, the PLA of yesteryear, or, to use more layman terms, our grandfather's PLA, they actually have developed a very adequate capability to do their jobs. And they understand the seriousness of that. Are there issues with that? Are there issues with it? Yes. But over time, that will decrease. And I think another misconception is how the PLA is, copies the United States or United States military and what they do. The Timu Black Hawk, or this, or pick whatever
Yeah.
aircraft that they're, or whatever Chinese flavored flanker that's flying about now.
Coincidentally similar to something that we have. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, they do that. However, how they would employ that would be completely alien to us. Like going back and talking about ISR, they're developing, a network to be able to target your unit or or whatever vehicle that you're operating with whatever asset can touch you, whether it be, an HA-12 or an HA-20, or airborne if it's a PL-15 launched from like J-15 all the way up to H-13, HQ-13.
So
So it's one of the
explain that to like a corporal squad leader in layman's terms. What does that mean for them?
Yeah, so for that one is that if you see any asset on the field, when any PLA asset on the field would have the ability to see you, and they may not be able to target you, but they will most definitely send that information to something that can.
So something like a mesh network, essentially, where all sensors are connected to shooters, and whether or not that thing that sees you has the ability to kill you, it'll quickly relay it to something else that does. Yeah. What I guess as we get kind of close to closing out for this episode, what do you think? I mean, we kind of already alluded a little bit to at the small unit leader level, like camouflage and concealment, some things like that. Is there anything additional that you would offer to small unit leaders, whether NCOs or platoon commanders, and things that you would recommend that they do or start leaning into to prepare in the event that, God forbid, we do end up going to conflict with China? What should they be doing?
I would say one would be prepared to take risk. I don't know if it's be able to take risk during operations, whether it be, conducting a move that would probably wipe out, a fire team during the movement. They should be able to understand that that's the risk of war. That, during any engagement, especially during a large scale engagement conflict, that will happen on a, almost regular basis. And so be able to understand and be prepared to understand that's a risk. Another one would be to understand that you may not be able to have contact with higher headquarters, and you should be able to understand, hey, I don't have contact with my platoon leader, but he wants me to do XYZ. Let's go see what we can do to achieve those goals.
Yeah. I love that, the mindset of just operating off a commander's intent. I mean, truly your mind, regardless of your rank, your ability to understand what higher is telling you to do and then go forth and execute. I love the fact that you mentioned not having comms, not having any touch points with higher. Like, you just need to be able to go execute and just make good decisions, identify risk and make a decision. That's it, period, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What closing message would you like to send to any Marines that are active duty listening to you right now?
I would say, just for any active duty Marines that are listening, we have 250 years of winning our nation's battles because we are Marines. Because we have the ability to not only understand what is needed to win the battle, but have the warrior ethos or mindset, if you will, to actually achieve those goals, regardless if it's, shooting a person in the face with a 5.56 or 6.8 in the future, or driving serrated steel into their neck. And you should be able to do that regardless of whatever situation you're in during combat.
Joaquin has me fired up to go run through a wall. I think I'm going to put the mic down and go PT for 5 hours straight now. Brother, that was an incredible breakdown. We definitely will need to do another episode again. I think we've got a lot more conversation to get out of this discussion. So definitely we'll be reaching out to you again to try to get you on the show again. But really, really appreciate you kind of helping us cut through the noise a little bit and focus on what things should Marines actually know. So I appreciate it greatly, and thank you again for your time today.
Thank you, man. I really do appreciate coming on here and, discussing the PLA. I'm very passionate about it, and I love passing on that knowledge to, the young warfighter, something that I wish I had whenever I was in the Marines.
Huge thanks again to Joaquin for joining us today. If there's one takeaway that I got from this episode, it's the fact that Marines win when things go wrong. And we win because friction is a weapon that we can use. And it's as relevant as it's ever been. Initiative and your ability to operate off of decentralized intent from higher absolutely will beat a robot. If you haven't followed him on Instagram yet, go ahead and look him up. His name is @Sino_talk. He's really got great breakdowns, especially for small unit leaders that are wanting to lean into things that they can do and really just learn more about the PLA in general. If you're listening to this episode right now, please take a second, hit subscribe, and maybe share this episode with one of your Marines who is in your squad or in your unit. And as always, follow Lost LT 1775 on Instagram and check out our website. We'll have the link in the show notes for more resources, things you can download and teach to your team. So once again, this is episode 9. We drop new episodes every Tuesday. And just remember, keep learning, keep leading, and utmost importance, it is not about you. It's about your Marines and the young, incredible men and women that you have the opportunity to lead. Thank you again, and we'll see you next week.
Folks, you've been listening to Lost LT's Razor with Lost LT and the Old Man. Join us again next week for another episode on wherever you get your podcasts. Lost LT fires a new podcast episode downrange every Tuesday. Make sure to follow the Lost LT's Razor on Spotify and Instagram so you get the weekly reminders. So until next time, Semper Fi.
All right.